The courtyard went quiet except for the hiss of the cooking fire and the soft whine of a mosquito trapped in the woven window screen. The boys had been laughing a moment ago. Dion, with a loose tooth he kept poking with his tongue, and little Zuri, who followed laughter the way chicks follow grain. But their smiles flattened into a straight line when Darius's foot lifted. "Watch me handle this," he told his friends, his voice dripping with the kind of pride that can drown a man. The sandal smacked against Amara's side with a sharp thud. She staggered sideways, the wooden spoon in her hand clattering to the cement. Hot pepper stew splashed her ankles and streaked the hem of her wrap. Dion's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Zuri's doll slipped from her arms and landed face down in the dust. The men, Darius's friends, exchanged those sideways grins men share when they think cruelty is a kind of spice you throw into the air to flavor the day. "See?" Darius said, chin tilted, as if the sun itself sat there. "You don't talk back when men are talking?" Amara steadied herself, one palm to the low wall, her breath sharp but controlled. Even the mango tree seemed to hold its leaves still. In the silence, a hen scratched twice and then, as though embarrassed, waddled away. Amara did not cry. She did not plead. Her eyes found the children first, counted them the way a sailor counts stars. Then her gaze moved past Darius to the faces of his friends. The cousin from up the street who never brought salt to a pot but always wanted to eat. The tall one who wore a cap too tight for his head, and Jonah the oldest, who should have known better. "Are you satisfied?" she asked, voice level and clear. It wasn't a challenge. It was a stone placed gently on the path. Darius laughed for the crowd. "Woman, go inside." The world began moving again. A moto rickshaw rattled past the gate, sputtering like a tired goat. Somewhere beyond the courtyard wall, a radio played a high-life tune that wanted to dance but didn't dare. Amara bent to pick up the spoon, wincing when the tender place on her ribs touched her arm. She turned to the pot, tasted the stew as if nothing had happened, and added a pinch of ground crayfish. The simple rhythm of care, stir, taste, stir, settled the courtyard like a familiar song. "Can we eat now?" Zuri whispered, her voice tiny as a bead. "Soon," Amara said. Darius's friends laughed at something small and unimportant, the way men do when they need a bridge from shame to whatever comes next. Darius himself clapped his hands once, loud, forced, and grabbed his cup of palm wine. He lifted it high and said, "To respect in a house." The men drank. Some of the wine ran down Darius's wrist and dripped to the ground at his feet, a libation without prayer. Amara watched him without seeming to. She had the kind of eyes that could be a lake, shallow and sparkling, or a deep well that swallowed secrets. Today they were the well, and what fell into them did not return. She served the food without a tremor. Fufu and stew on enamel plates with chipped edges, extra meat for the guests, a smaller piece for Darius, and the choicest bit, fish head, gleaming and seasoned, just right, set aside for Zuri, who loved to work out the cheeks with patient thumb and tongue. Dayon waited for his father's nod before he reached. He had learned the choreography of this house the way other boys learn, dribbling drills, head down, quick feet, eyes always on the next move. Zuri said grace in the sing-song way of children, half prayer, half melody. When they began to eat, the air filled with small sounds, the soft slap of fufu, the hiss of stew meeting tongue, the scrape of spoons. The men talked of a football match that would not happen, of a job that might, of a neighbor's cousin's new car that everyone knew was not really his. Only after the men had licked their fingers and leaned back did Amara wash the bowls, wringing the cloth until it sang with the squeak of soap. She moved slowly, not from pain but from calculation. She set each dish to dry on the rack, the way a chess player sets pawns, knowing where the end lies, though the beginning looks harmless. "Let me walk you," Jonah said to Darius's friends, sensing perhaps that the air had thinned, that the mango leaves were listening. They went. The gate clicked shut, the kind of sound that can be a blessing or a curse. Darius stood in the courtyard, stretching his arms like a rooster that thinks dawn follows its crow. He looked at Amara as if the earlier moment were already fading, as if his foot had brushed a stool and not a person. You know you make me do these things, he said casually, carelessly. You put me in positions. Amara dried her hands and hung the cloth on the nail by the door. Positions, she repeated as though it were a new word she wanted to taste properly. She looked at the children again, and in that look there was a list of what they needed. Shoes that didn't pinch, school fees in a month, a new strap for Dion's backpack, Zuri's cough syrup. She turned back to Darius and nodded, as if a small problem had been explained, and now they could move on to the real matter. Sleep, she said to the children. Brush your teeth first. They went obediently, relief making them quiet. Darius watched them disappear through the doorway. His jaw worked, chewing on pride that had turned to gristle. You will not embarrass me in front of my friends again, he said, although no one had seen Amara do anything except stand and breathe. Amara did not reply. She stepped into the house and reemerged with a shallow wooden bowl. She knelt in the dust beside the mango tree and began to shell groundnuts, popping them from their thin husks, dropping the clean kernels into the bowl, letting the brittle shells scatter like thoughts she no longer needed. Are you listening? Darius demanded. She looked up from the groundnuts with an expression that was not defiance and not submission. It was something older and more demanding than either. I am counting, she said. Counting what? The days, she replied, and cracked another shell. He frowned. Darius was not a man who liked puzzles unless he had placed the pieces himself. He spat into the dust and went inside, muttering about sleep and early mornings. The door banged shut behind him. Night came fully then, the kind that makes a courtyard feel like a bowl of ink. A gecko clicked approval from the wall. Amara finished shelling, covered the bowl with a cloth, and sat with her back against the mango tree. The bark pressed into her shoulder blade, and under the pain in her side, a drum began to beat, the slow, deliberate rhythm of a plan finding its feet. The ancestors draw near when the house is quiet, the elders say. They come like moths to a night lamp, silent and certain, hovering just beyond the edge of sight. In the hush, a story rose in Amara's mind. It was one her grandmother used to tell when the harmattan wind made the nights dry and full of crackle. Once there was a man who kicked at the stump of a tree to show his strength. He boasted and laughed, and the people laughed with him. But the tree was not a stump. It was a root, and the root ran deep and far. When the rains came, the root carried water to the man's fields, and the fields fed his children. The elders asked him, "Will you still kick the root that feeds you?" The man lowered his head. He had bruised himself against his own future. Amara breathed slowly. A root doesn't shout, she murmured. It grows. Inside the house, Darius snored. A ragged saw through wood. Amara stood and went to the children's room. Zuri slept with her mouth open, lashes on cheek like two fine lines drawn by a careful hand. Dayon lay on his side, arms wrapped around his pillow as if it were a football he wouldn't fumble again. Amara touched their foreheads lightly. Your mother is here, she whispered, though she did not use the word I. In this house, even pronouns felt like stones you could trip over. She sat on the edge of Dayon's bed, listening to their breaths. The plan came together with simple materials, the way a market woman can turn a few peppers, a single onion, and a palm full of groundnuts into a stew that makes a hungry person feel full. First, she would speak with Auntie Ola at the clinic. Auntie Ola had a voice like soft cloth and eyes that could sew up holes in a story until it held water. Then she would visit Baba Keiji, the drum maker, who knew how to make sound carry and where to place a message so it traveled without losing its shape. After that, she would stop by the school and ask Mr. Reed whether the bursar still accepted work in exchange for part of the fees. There were always ways, some old, some new, some that needed courage like water needs a pot. She traced these steps in the air with her finger, drawing a map no one else could see. When the map was done, she folded it and tucked it behind her heart. In the morning, the courtyard smelled of damp earth and new light. Dion practiced his speech for school. Good morning, teachers and friends. And Zuri tried to match her shoes. Darius sat on the low stool by the door, tying a bandana on his head as if it were a crown. He cleared his throat. About yesterday, he said. The words shaped like an apology, but wearing another face. You know how friends can be. Amara set a plate in front of him, bread she had pan-toasted to trick it into thinking it was something else, and a mug of cocoa. Eat before it cool, she said. Her voice was warm but not soft. The difference matters. He took a bite, chewed, and glanced toward the children. You will not put them against me, he added. The wind does not have to push a door that opens by itself, Amara said, as if talking to the cocoa. Dion coughed into his elbow. Zuri hummed the tune from the radio. Darius left in a cloud of cologne that tried too hard. He stood at the gate, looked back for approval he did not receive, and clicked his tongue. Then he was gone, striding down the street as if the ground owed him something. The neighbors pretended not to notice. Pretending is another kind of currency in a community. It can pay for peace in small amounts. Amara tied a scarf over her hair and walked the children to school. The road carried the mixed music of a place between worlds, talking drum and trap beat, roosters and car horns, a hawker calling puff puff, a teenager blasting Afro beats from a cracked speaker. The school gate was painted blue but chipped, as if paint were a promise that had been made with enthusiasm and kept with fatigue. Mr. Reed greeted them, his American accent softened by years of hearing names like Chiamaka and Tunde and Aliyah all in one breath. Morning, Mrs. Amara, he said. Morning, champs. He touched his fist to his chest and the children beamed. Please, sir, Amara said once the children had joined the line. The bursar? In early today, he said. Bad mood too. Good to catch him before it spoils all the way. She thanked him and went to the office. The bursar, Mr. Cole, had a frown that looked permanent, like a scar. She did not let it scare her. Water can shape stone if it keeps moving. She explained herself without pleading, offered work without shame, and left with an agreement tucked into her bag. It wasn't perfect, but it had corners she could hold. From there she went to the clinic. Auntie Ola's hands were warm even though the room was cool. You're strong, Auntie Ola said, as she pressed gently where the bruise glowed under Amara's wrapper. Strength is quieter than people think, Amara replied. Auntie Ola nodded. Do you want me to write it down? She asked. For the file? Amara considered. Words on paper become stones, useful for building, dangerous when thrown. Yes, she said finally. Write it. Write it like weather. Not accusation, not gossip. A record. Auntie Ola wrote, steady hand, neat lines. If you need a place to be, she added, you can sit in my office any day. No one asks why a woman sits in a chair. Thank you, Amara said. Gratitude is a seed. If you plant it, it usually grows. On her way home, she stopped at Baba Keji's stall. The old man sat cross-legged, a half-finished drum in his lap, his hands moving with a patience that made time blush. Goat skin stretched tight over carved wood, ropes zigzagging down the sides like paths on a mountain. You have come, he said without looking up. The tree told me. What did it say? Amara asked, leaning against the stall. The air smelled of wood shavings and something sweet she couldn't name. That you stood like a root last night, he said. People think roots do not move. They move. They choose their direction very carefully. Amara smiled. Baba, I need sound, she said. Not noise, sound that travels to the right ears. He lifted his head then, eyes like two small moons. Ah, a message. Whose ears? The ones that think themselves wise. The ones that like to gather where others bow. The ones who will meet under the big neem tree tomorrow night. He grinned, showing a gap in his teeth where the truth could slip through. Tomorrow night, the elders meet for petty talk that they will call council. You want them to hear about a man who mistakes his house for an audience. I want them to remember that the fence is not only to keep animals out, Amara said. It protects what is inside too. Baba Keji tapped the drumhead twice. The sound was deep and traveled. I can place a rhythm, he said, in the steps of the praise singer who always arrives late. He will sing something like a proverb, and the proverb will carry a name without saying it. The men will look at each other and remember their mothers. Good, Amara said. Let the sound do the work a voice cannot. They arranged the details the way people fold fabric, crisp, careful, edges aligned. When she left, Baba Keji called after her, Remember, child, the moon does not shout. It simply arrives, and everything else changes color. Back in the courtyard, Amara swept, cooked, tidied. Work is its own kind of armor. Little by little, a quiet strength stitched itself across the morning. At noon, she rested under the mango tree, the bruise in her side a slow burn, the heat pressing down like a hand trying to hold her in place. A neighbor, Mama Grace, peered over the low wall with eyes that said she had seen what she had seen and was choosing, for now, to speak gently. "I have okra," Mama Grace said, holding up a small bag. "Fresh." "Bring," Amara said, and took it with thanks. They did not talk about the night before. Women sometimes carry whole histories between them, like water in a calabash, balanced, unspilled, understood without words. When Mama Grace left, she squeezed Amara's arm and said, "We are here." "We," Amara echoed, and the word hummed like a string. Evening slipped in dressed like a friend. Dayan and Zuri came home with dust on their socks and stories in their mouths. Dayan spoke of a math problem like a rival wrestler he intended to defeat. Zuri described a butterfly that had landed on her braid and then flown away with secrets. They ate okra stew with laughter. Darius did not come for dinner. He sent a message through the cousin from up the street. "Busy. Tell them to keep my share." The cousin did not meet Amara's eyes. Night again. In the children's room, Amara told a story about a tortoise who borrowed pride from a peacock and forgot to give it back. Midway, she paused and listened. There it was. Footsteps at the gate, unsteady, the scrape of a key that missed the lock twice before finding it. Darius entered, the smell of cheap gin and men's talk going stale. "You think you are a queen now?" he mumbled, dropping onto the stool. "Talking to everybody, clinic, market, even that old drum goat. You think I didn't see?" Amara did not answer. She tucked the children in and closed their door with a care that felt like a prayer. In the courtyard, she faced him, small and straight as a narrow tree that had decided height was not the only way to reach the sky. "You will mind yourself," Darius warned, finding his anger where his pride had run thin. "I am not to be played with." "And I am not a stool to be kicked," she said. The words fell between them and did not break. He rose, swaying, and for one heartbeat the courtyard became the center of the world again, the air thin, the leaves listening. "If you embarrass me tomorrow," he said, "if anyone says anything, I will make you learn." "Tomorrow," she repeated. The map behind her heart opened and aligned with the shape of the night. He stumbled into the house, muttering. The door closed. The gecko clicked once. Amara stood very still. She could feel the old stories crowding close. Women with fire in their hands, men who learned too late that a gourd could hold more than water, children who grew wise because someone had to. She placed her palm flat against the mango tree. Its skin was rough and cool. Under her hand, she felt the slow, sure push of sap climbing, undisturbed by noise at the root. The next day, a whisper began as the sun lifted. It moved through the market like smoke. Easy to notice, hard to catch. "Did you hear?" it said. "Tonight under the neem, the praise singer will have a new proverb." Some laughed, some rolled their eyes. The elders straightened their wrappers and practiced looking bored. Jonah sent a message to Darius. "Come early, stand with me, there's talk." Darius puffed himself and sent back a thumbs up, the universal sign of a man who thinks signs are enough. Afternoon drifted, slow and sticky. Amara tied cloth packets with dried fish and powdered pepper and tucked them into a basket. "For Auntie Ola," she told the children. "For Mr. Reed. For Baba Keji. Gifts are bridges. Regardless of who crosses them first, both sides come closer." Before dusk, the sky turned the color of ripe pawpaw. The neem tree behind the community hall sharpened its silhouette against the light. Men gathered under it, their voices low at first, then bigger as they remembered themselves. Women lingered on the edges, heads together, eyes everywhere. Children wove through the legs like small brave fish among reeds. The praise singer arrived late, as promised, striding with the confidence of someone who had been given a rhythm to carry, not a song to invent. He lifted his talking drum and the drum answered as if it had been waiting to hear the question. A hush, the kind that leans forward, settled under the neem. He began with praise names for the town. Riverbend, where the river changes its mind. Green Market, where coins jingle like rain. Sky Floor, where ancestors come close enough to smell the stew. The elders smiled, teeth in approval, He praised the farmers, the traders, the teachers with chalk on their hands and faith in their pockets. He praised the midwives who catch babies the way fishermen catch dawn. Then his drum paused. When it spoke again, its voice was lower, traveling farther. People of this place, he sang, there is a man who kicks the root and calls it power. But when the rain comes, root remembers. It carries the water to the house of the patient one, and the yard of the kicker cracks. Laughter bubbled, then died, then returned, unsure of itself. Heads turned the way sunflowers turn. Darius shifted on his feet and looked at Jonah, who shrugged as if he did not know the words but liked the tune. The elders cleared their throats in unison, which is another way of speaking. The drum rolled on. There is a woman who stands like a tree, the singer chanted, not shouting, not bending where she should not bend. The wind can try her leaves, but her root is married to the earth. If you know her, greet her with both hands. Murmurs now, quick and secret. Mama Grace's mouth tightened. Auntie Ola's eyes flicked to the crowd and then away. Mr. Reed, standing near the back with the other teachers, shifted his weight, as if to make room for something new. Darius forced a laugh. All this talk for who? He called, trying to make his voice a net that could catch the drifting words. Sing names if you have them. The praise singer smiled without teeth. Names are like calabashes, he replied. They carry better with two hands. His drum answered him. Ta-dum! Ta-dum! Steady as a heart with no secrets. In that moment, before anyone decided what to say next, the crowd parted the way grass parts for a slow river. Amara stepped forward with Dayon on one side and Zuri on the other. Her wrapper was the color of storm clouds that make farmers hopeful. Her head tie sat low and neat. The bruise on her rib was hidden, but the dignity in her posture was not. She did not speak. She did not have to. Somewhere near the back, a child began to clap a rhythm that did not match the drum. Other children picked it up, offbeat but sincere. The elders frowned at the disorder. The praise singer's drum found the children's rhythm and bent to it, laughing with its skin. The crowd breathed out as one body. That's her, a voice whispered. The woman. The whisper did not say her name, and yet everyone heard it. Darius lifted his chin. Go home, he told Amara, loud enough for the crowd to hear, angling his words like a knife meant to slip between ribs and not leave a scar. You're causing a scene. She looked at the elders, not at him. Elders, she said, and her voice carried the weight of someone who has learned the cost of sound. I came to listen. The oldest elder, who had changed his walking stick more times than most men change their opinions, nodded. Then listen, he said. All of us. The praise singer lowered his drum to his hip and hummed a line that tasted like fresh water. The neem leaves rustled, though the air had stilled. Then Jonah, who should have known better, took a half step toward Darius and said in a low voice that nevertheless traveled, Make sure you control your house. People are watching. Darius's face hardened. He looked from Jonah to the elders, from the elders to the crowd, and from the crowd to the small faces of his children. Something bright and foolish leaped across his eyes. He raised his hand, and a hand caught his wrist before it could fall. It was not Amara's. It was small, swift, and certain. The crowd gasped. Even the drum went silent, as if the goat skin remembered the goat, and the goat remembered running. Darius's arm froze in the air, held by fingers that seemed too slender for such strength. The elders leaned forward. The children craned. Dayon's breath hitched. Zuri's lips parted, prayer and surprise fighting for room. The one who held Darius's wrist did not release it. Not here, the voice said, cool as shade, old as warning, new as dawn. And as the crowd opened to see who had stepped between a man and his old habit, a low wind moved through the neem tree, turning its leaves over like pages. The praise singer lifted his drum again, struck it once, and the sound rang out like a bell that calls both lions and lambs to the same water. What stood before Darius was the last person he expected, and the first person Amara had counted on. The courtyard, the elders, the children, the night itself, all leaned in. Then the wind fell still, the drum head stopped trembling, and the truth stepped fully into the light. The hand on Darius's wrist belonged to Auntie Ola. She was not tall, She wore a plain cotton dress with a soft print and a scarf tied in a tidy knot, but her fingers were sure, and her gaze had the stillness of clean water in a clay pot. She did not squeeze or shake. She simply held. "Not here," she said again, voice low enough to respect the night, firm enough to shape it. A hush spread under the neem tree. It traveled from the front rows to the back like a shadow moving across a field. Jonah cleared his throat, pretending he'd meant to intervene all along. The elders shifted on their stools, their eyes finding one another the way old friends do before a hard conversation. The praise singer rested his drum against his hip and waited, head bowed, listening for a rhythm no one else could hear. Amara did not move. Her hands were at her sides, palms open, empty of everything except intention. Dion stood at her right, small chin lifted, learning by watching. Zuri shifted from one foot to the other, and then grew still too, copying her mother's stillness the way children copy laughter and grief without knowing they're learning a language. Darius tried to yank free. He expected his strength to be enough. It was not. Auntie Ola's grip didn't tighten. It settled deeper like a root finding better earth. Darius blinked, confused by the math. Small hand, strong boundary, and scowled to cover it. "Leave my arm," he said through his teeth. Auntie Ola met his eyes. "I will," she said, "when you are standing like someone who knows the elders are watching." He looked past her at the row of carved walking sticks, the folded wrappers, the slow, even breaths of men who had delivered babies in the dark, buried friends at noon, and held a village together when the roofs rattled under Harmattan wind. There are some audiences a man cannot perform for. He lowered his arm a few inches. Auntie Ola released him and stepped back. Her hand hovered in the air for a heartbeat, then fell to her side. The oldest elder leaned forward on his staff. His voice came out like the last note of a long song. "We have ears," he said. "We will use them." A murmur of assent moved through the circle. The praise singer answered with two soft strikes on the drum. Ta, dum, agreement sealed in sound. Mama Grace slipped closer to Amara and the children, her presence a small wall against the press of bodies. Mr. Reed, in a short-sleeved shirt with sweat rings at the collar, edged forward from the back, eyes on Dion and Zuri, the way a teacher watches his students cross a busy road. The elder with the stick lifted his chin toward Auntie Ola. "Sister," he said, "you have come from the clinic." "Yes," she replied. "I saw Amara today. I documented what I saw." Her words were neither pity nor accusation. They were scaffolding, something to hold weight. "Documented?" Jonah echoed, as if the syllables offended him. Auntie Ola did not look at him. "We keep records, not for gossip, for truth." Another elder, this one with a small scar on his cheek from a boyhood fall, spoke. "What happened in the courtyard last night is known," he said, not as a question. Eyes slid toward Darius and away again. The neem leaves shivered, though the air was still. Darius attempted a laugh, but it came out thin. "Men joke with their wives," he said. "People are making stories." The praise singer's drum tapped once, as if to say, "We know the difference between a joke and a bruise." Mr. Reed raised a hand halfway and then lowered it, remembering he was not in a classroom. "With respect," he said anyway, American vowels softened by years of listening to this place. Dayon struggled to raise his hand in school today. He said he was tired. "I am not blind." No one asked how a teacher's eyes might matter in a circle of elders and a ring of neighbors. Everyone understood. Some truths gather witnesses on their way to the light. The oldest elder turned to Amara. "Daughter," he said, "you asked to listen. We have listened. Now we will speak, and you will answer, and the man will answer, and the community will decide what the fence must keep out and what it must keep safe." Amara bowed her head. "I will answer," she said. She spoke without detail, meant to wound, and without softness, meant to soothe. She told what happened. The words, the laughter, the foot. She spoke of children startled into silence, of stew on her skin, of a night where a plan began to grow like a vine on a bare wall. She did not say Darius's name. She did not have to. Darius rolled his shoulders as if loosening them could change the shape of what lay on them. "She pushes me," he said. "She thinks she is better than me. She talks to everyone. The wind cannot push a house that stands, an elder murmured. It wasn't advice. It was a weather report for Darius to consider. The circle might have taken a familiar path then. Long talk, short memory, well-meant advice that withers by morning, if not for the careful work that had been done while the sun was up. Baba Keji stepped into the open space, his drum maker's hands dusty with shavings. He set a small talking drum at the oldest elder's feet, then another at the scarred elder's feet, then one by the third elder, who had been quiet all evening. Tonight, he said, sound will travel the truth in more than one direction. The elders nodded, accepting the instrument as they might accept a glass of water. Baba Keji looked at Amara, and the smallest smile walked across his face and hid again. Jonah shifted where he stood. He was not a man who liked surprises he had not arranged. The oldest elder lifted his chin toward the edge of the circle. "Who will speak for the children?" he asked. To everyone's surprise, Zuri's hand went up before Dion's. Mr. Reed took a step, put a hand gently on Zuri's shoulder, and said, "Only if you want to." Zuri nodded with the solemnity children borrow for important moments. "We were eating," she said, looking at the elder's stick instead of at her father. "And then it was not nice. The doll fell. I picked it up." She stopped, thinking. "My mommy made the stew sweet." A low sound moved through the crowd, something like a sigh and something like a promise. Dion swallowed, then lifted his chin. "I don't like when people laugh like that," he said, voice catching. "Like the ground is a joke." The praise singer stroked the back of his drum with his palm. "Shh," honoring the small courage of small voices. Darius stared at his son, then at his daughter, then past them to a place where excuses live. They did not come. The scarred elder spoke next. "We have a council rule, Shirinuromi," he said. "It is new. Not everyone remembers. When a man or a woman is made unsafe in their home, the community can draw a boundary that is not only words. The clinic record marks the boundary. The teacher's witness marks it. The elder's hearing marks it. For 30 days, the one who did harm cannot sleep in the house where it happened. He must find a roof among his friends who clap for him. He must come at appointed times with an elder present if he wishes to see his children. He must prove his hands know how to carry water without spilling it." A rumble of surprise, heads turned. Some approval, some resistance, sour as unripe fruit. Jonah's mouth tightened. "Since when?" he demanded. "Since last season," the elder replied. "We are tired of burying quiet." The oldest elder's eyes found Darius. "Do you hear?" Darius laughed too loud. "Who will make me?" he said, the question as old as pride and as foolish as fire without a pot. The answer arrived from the edges of the circle. Members of the night watch, men and women both, stepped into the light, red bands tied around their forearms, faces open, hands empty. They did not reach for Darius. They stood near him and near Amara and near the elders, forming a shape that said, "This boundary is not a suggestion." "Take caution," Antiola said softly. "Caution is cheaper than regret." Darius looked at Jonah. Jonah looked at the ground. The men from the courtyard last night avoided his eyes. Respect, like money, can leave a pocket faster than a man expects. The oldest elder lifted his hand. "It is decided," he said. 30 days. We will meet again in 7 to hear what water has carried." A murmur rose. Some exhaled. Some muttered. One woman clapped once, sharp. The praise singer gave the drum a rolling phrase that sounded like a gate swinging open and then settling closed. Darius jutted his jaw. "I have rights," he said, and for the first time it wasn't bravado. It was fear putting on a coat it didn't know how to wear. "You have responsibilities," the scarred elder corrected. "Do those first. The rights will feel less heavy." Amara bowed to the elders. She turned to the night watch and thanked them with both hands, palms open. She touched Dion's head, then Zuri's. She did not look at Darius. She had already counted what looking would cost her. Neighbors began to drift away, conversation buzzing soft as evening insects. The neem leaves whispered the kind of things trees say when they've seen too much and decided to keep supporting the sky anyway. Mama Grace leaned in and brushed imaginary dust from Amara's sleeve. "I will sleep at your house this week," she murmured, "on the mat by the door. Not because you need me, because I need to do something useful." Come, Amara said. Bring your noisy snore. It might have ended there for the night. Decision made. Guard set. Quiet settling in like cool water after heat. If not for the second part of the plan, stepping forward on light feet. Baba Keji lifted one of the small talking drums he had set by the elders and offered it to the praise singer. The singer frowned, puzzled. Baba Keji tilted the drum so that the crowd could see the underside. Etched into the wood was a simple symbol, a circle with a line drawn through it, and within the circle a smaller square. Some recognized it, most did not. The mark of the Women's Cooperative. Mama Grace breathed. Savings and loans. Jonah's head snapped up. Why is that on a drum? Baba Keji did not answer Jonah. He addressed the elders. Sometimes, he said, sound must carry a message to people who measure respect in coins. This drum belongs to the women who hold the market's small river of money together. Yesterday, those women voted. The vote says, any man who treats his house like a stage will not be trusted with credit for 30 days. If he buys on credit, he buys from his friends who clapped. If his friends refuse to carry his hunger, he will feel it himself. We have finished advising with words. Now we will advise with pockets. A ripple of shock passed through the men clustered near Jonah. A few laughed angrily. One said, let's see them try. Another muttered to his feet. But around the edges, where the traders and hawkers and tie-dye makers stood, nods moved like grain in a breeze. Who led that vote? The oldest elder asked quietly, though he already knew. Names carry better with two hands, Baba Keji replied, smiling a little toward Amara, and a little toward Mama Grace, and a little toward three other women who had drifted closer without making a show. Darius stared at the drum, at the mark, at the circle that had closed around him without shouting. His breath quickened. He made a small movement as if to lunge, to break something, to prove he could still change the shape of the night by force. Auntie Ola stepped into his line of sight. She did not touch him this time. Her hands stayed at her sides. Listen carefully, she said. This is not punishment for its own sake. It is offense so that your house can heal without you breaking the healing with your feet. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked past her to his children, and for the first time his eyes softened, briefly, like heat letting go of metal. The elders rose one by one, the creak of their knees part of the ceremony. The praise singer lifted his drum and sent a final phrase into the sky, a string of sound that rose and then fell, promising return. People began to disperse. The night watch formed a quiet ridge between Darius and the path Amara would take home. Mr. Reed bent to Zuri and whispered something that made her nod, then looked up at Dion and mimed breathing in and out slowly until Dion's shoulders dropped. Amara stepped closer to the elders and spoke low enough that only they could hear. Thank you for the fence, she said. There is one more thing I ask. The oldest elder tipped his head. Say it. Words carry far, she said. But there is a place in the morning where words do not reach, where men hire men, where labor is bought by the hour. Darius stands there most days. He boasts there most days. I do not want to starve him. I want him to understand the price of noise. The scarred elder narrowed his eyes slightly, thoughtful. What is the thing you ask? That the foreman hear from you, Amara said, that the man who cannot keep his hand at his side under a neem tree should not be lifting sacks where other men's daughters pass. For 30 days only. After that, if he can hold his posture, let him lift the sky again. There was a moment in which even the night watch forgot to breathe. Limits are hard things to place and harder to hold. The elders weighed the request like grain. They looked at the talking drums with the cooperative's mark. They looked at the children sleeping soon and growing later. They looked at the man and the woman and the road between them. At last, the oldest elder nodded once. We will go at dawn, he said. We will speak few words. We will not speak of shame. We will speak of safety. Amara bowed, gratitude passing through her without making her smaller. Darius's face flushed, then paled, then flushed again. You are trying to end me, he hissed. Amara turned to him fully for the first time that night. Her voice was steady and hushed, so quiet that only those nearest could hear, which made the words heavier. I am ending a habit, she said. If you are attached to your habit, you will feel it leaving. He stared, breath shallow, mouth open, as if the night had stolen a word he wanted back. The children tugged at Amara's wrapper. She gathered them close. Mama Grace fell in beside them. The night watch stepped a pace ahead and a pace behind, forming a moving doorway. They began to walk. Behind them, Darius stood under the neem tree, alone in the way a man can be alone even in a crowd. Jonah approached, face tight with irritation and worry tangled together. "You let this grow too far," Jonah muttered. "Tomorrow we will fix it." Darius did not answer. He was listening, to the way the ground felt under his feet, to the way the night refused to bend, to the way his own breath broke against a truth he had tried to outrun. When Amara reached the gate of her courtyard, she paused. The moon had climbed, laying thin light on the mango leaves, turning each one into a small blade. She glanced down the street toward the market, then toward the road where the laborers gathered before dawn, then up at the sky where quiet always kept its appointment. She pushed the gate open. On the low wall by the entrance sat a small calabash bowl, stoppered with wax and wrapped with red thread. No one had placed it there while the family was home. No one had dared leave it openly in daylight. It was a woman's thing, and an elder's thing, and an old thing, and it meant only one message when the thread was red and the stopper was waxed. Separation oath. Mama Grace's breath caught. The night watch looked at one another. Even Mr. Reed, who had heard many local stories and believed more than outsiders thought he should, felt the skin on his forearms rise. Amara reached for the calabash, paused, then drew her hand back. "Whose hand?" she asked the darkness, calm and clear. From across the lane, a figure stepped into the spill of moonlight and raised a palm in greeting. It was not a stranger. It was a person Darius had boasted about often, a person he had always claimed as his witness, in his shield. The figure's voice carried across the quiet street, steady, unmistakable. "Child," the voice said to Amara, "I brought it." And with that, the one person Darius never imagined would stand with Amara lifted the red-threaded calabash in both hands and held it toward the doorway. The figure who stepped into the moonlight was Jonah's father, Elder Malachi. He was a man the village respected for his sharp tongue and his sharper memory. He was the kind of elder whose words were often final, whose approval was a shield, and whose disapproval could hollow a man's pride faster than hunger hollows a belly. For years, Darius had bragged, "Elder Malachi is like a second father to me. When he speaks, everyone listens." Now here he was, standing with Amara, holding the red-threaded calabash like a torch. The murmurs spread through the street like a brush fire. Children leaned from doorways. Women crossed their arms, whispering to one another. Even the night watch stiffened, realizing the weight of what this meant. Darius's jaw slackened. "Papa Malachi," he stammered, voice breaking into the silence. Why are you bringing this to her house? Why are you standing there?" Elder Malachi set the calabash carefully on the low wall, as though laying down a verdict that had been waiting generations to be spoken. He straightened, his frame wiry but unbent by age. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade through rope. "Because I was the one who asked the women to tie this oath," he said. The crowd gasped. Even Amara's eyes widened, though she had suspected some invisible hand was at work. Darius shook his head, sweat purling on his brow, though the night was cool. No, you raised me like your own. You told me a man's pride is his crown." Malachi's eyes burned with something old and heavy. "And what has your crown brought you, boy? A courtyard where your children learn fear before they learn laughter? A wife who wears her bruises like beads she never asked for? That is no crown. That is a chain, and tonight, the chain breaks." He turned to Amara, bowing his head slightly. "Child, this oath was not made lightly. The women's hands mixed the herbs, the elders' voices blessed it, and I, who once defended your husband, placed the seal. If you accept it, the 30 days will not just be words. The separation will be binding, and the ancestors themselves will guard it. If he steps across your threshold before the moon has waxed and waned, misfortune will follow him like a shadow with no sun." The murmurs swelled louder. Some nodded approval. Others shifted uneasily. A red-threaded calabash was not just ritual. It was consequence wrapped in faith. The kind of thing that changed a family story forever. Darius's face twisted. He took a step forward, fists trembling at his sides. You? You betray me? In front of all these people? His voice cracked into rage. You choose her over your own blood? Elder Malachi did not flinch. I choose the truth, and I choose the children. If you cannot see that, then you are no son of mine. The crowd erupted, some gasping, some shouting in shock, some murmuring prayers under their breath. Zuri clutched Amara's wrapper tighter, her small fingers digging into the cloth. Dion stared at his father with wide, wet eyes, confusion and pain wrestling in his chest. Darius's chest heaved as if every breath were a battle. His eyes darted from the calabash to Amara, from the crowd to Elder Malachi. His pride screamed for him to smash the calabash, to spit on the ritual, to reclaim the night with violence. But his fear, new and sharp, held him back. Amara stepped forward, her voice calm, steady, but carrying the strength of every woman who had ever endured quietly and decided the quiet was over. I accept the oath, she said. The night froze. The words hung in the air, heavy as iron. A sudden gust of wind swept through the street, scattering dry leaves, rattling doors, and making the calabash tremble on the wall but not fall. The crowd gasped again, some covering their mouths, some bowing their heads. It was said that when a red-threaded calabash was accepted, the ancestors gave a sign. And this was more than a sign. This was a declaration. Elder Malachi nodded once, firm. So it is done. The praise singer, still at the neem tree, struck his drum once. Dumb, a sound that carried down the lane like thunder. Darius stumbled backward, eyes wild. This is witchcraft, he spat. You've turned everyone against me. You've shamed me in front of my children, my friends, the whole village. You think I will walk away like a dog? Amara met his eyes, and for the first time, she allowed the fire that had been hidden behind calm to show. No, she said. I think you will learn, and if you cannot, the oath will teach you what I cannot. The night watch moved closer, their red armbands gleaming in the moonlight. The crowd leaned forward, breathless, waiting for Darius's next move. And then from somewhere deep in the dark, a voice rose. A voice none expected. A voice that would change everything. It was one of Darius's friends from that night in the courtyard. The same men who had laughed when he raised his foot. His voice cracked through the stillness. Elders, before you pass this fully, there is something you do not know. Something about that night. The crowd erupted again, confusion rippling like waves. Amara's heart tightened. Elder Malachi's eyes narrowed. What secret could twist this night even further? The people whispered. And with every eye fixed on him, the man stepped forward, his face pale, his lips trembling, ready to confess a truth that no one was prepared to hear. The man who stepped forward was Jonah, the same Jonah who had sat in Darius's courtyard laughing when the sandal struck Amara. His cap was gone now, revealing his bald head that gleamed under the moonlight. His voice wavered, but desperation gave it wings. Elders, Jonah said, I cannot carry this alone anymore. That night, when Darius kicked Amara, it wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the worst. I laughed because that's what we do when pride drives us like cattle. But I knew something worse. The crowd hushed instantly. Even the insects seemed to fall silent, as though the earth itself was straining to hear. Jonah's eyes darted to Amara, then to Elder Malachi, then finally settled on the scarred elder, whose gaze had weighed him down since the circle began. That night, Jonah continued, after we ate, after the children went to sleep, Darius bragged. He said hurting her in front of the children was just the beginning. He told us he was planning to make her beg in the market square, to shame her where everyone could see. He said he'd done worse before, in another town, where he left his first woman with scars no cloth could cover. That's why he came here, to start fresh where no one knew him. A sharp cry escaped from the back of the crowd. Whispers swelled like a storm breaking loose. Someone hissed Darius's name, followed by curses. Amara's eyes widened, but she did not look surprised, only vindicated, as though her silence all this time had been waiting for someone else to finally open the hidden door. Darius's face burned red. "Lies!" he shouted, spittle flying. "Jonah, you snake! You drank my wine, you ate my food, and now you spit this poison because you're jealous of me." But Jonah pressed on, shaking his head. "Jealous? No, brother. I've carried guilt every night since. My mother told me, if you watch a man light fire to his own house and clap, the flames will lick your roof too. The fire is spreading, elders. If I don't speak now, it will burn us all." Elder Malachi's face darkened, his jaw clenching like a vice. "Is this true, Darius? Did you leave another woman broken in another town?" Darius turned in circles, looking for a way out, his pride fraying. "They twist my words. Men talk nonsense after drink. What man here hasn't joked with his friends?" But no laughter rose this time. The men who had once grinned at his cruelty shifted uneasily, unable to meet his eyes. The women shook their heads, murmuring to each other. Amara's voice rose then, cutting through the noise with the precision of a blade. "Elders, hear me. This is not just about bruises. This is a man who feeds on shame, who builds his pride on the bones of others. If you allow him to remain unchecked, then every courtyard in this village becomes unsafe. Today it is me. Tomorrow it may be your daughters." The crowd roared in agreement. Hands clapped. Feet stamped the dust. The air vibrated with the weight of collective fury and collective relief. That someone had finally named the danger aloud. The scarred elder lifted his staff, striking it 3 times into the ground. "Silence!" The crowd fell still. His voice rang with iron. "Darius, you have been judged already by your deeds. Now you are judged by your words. This is not a quarrel between husband and wife. This is a threat to the peace of our people, and peace has no price." He turned to the oldest elder, who nodded solemnly. "The oath stands. 30 days will be kept. But more than that, until we hear from the town you fled, you will not sit in the council of men. You will not hold trade in the market. You will not carry the honor of your name among us. The rope you tied with your own hands has found your neck." A heavy silence fell. Darius's lips trembled. His fists shook at his sides. He wanted to roar, to lash out, but the wall of red-banded night watch stood unmoving, and the eyes of his own people burned hotter than any fire he could raise. Zuri whispered into Amara's wrapper, "Mommy, is it over now?" Amara bent slightly, whispering back, "No, my child, it is just beginning." Because she knew the revenge she had promised was not only in the elder's decree, not only in Jonah's confession, not only in the calabash. Her revenge was deeper, slower, more patient. It was the kind that didn't just end a man's pride, it dismantled it piece by piece until he had nothing left to stand on. The praise singer raised his drum once more, striking a rhythm that was both warning and prophecy. The crowd, still simmering, began to disperse, murmuring of what tomorrow would bring. But Amara stood unmoving, her gaze fixed on Darius. And as the moonlight carved shadows across his face, Darius spoke in a low growl, meant only for her ears. "You think you've won tonight," he whispered. "But you don't know me, Amara. You don't know what I can do when I'm cornered." Amara's lips curved in the faintest smile, her eyes steady. "And you don't know me either, Darius. You don't know what happens when a woman stops counting days and starts counting weapons." The crowd thinned, the drums faded, and the night returned to its usual rhythm. But under that rhythm lay something sharper, darker, an approaching storm. The calabash sat on the wall, red thread glowing faintly in the moonlight, as if it had absorbed the anger and the fear of the night and was now waiting for what would come next. Viewers, if you were in Amara's position, would you have accepted the red-threaded calabash oath or handled Darius in another way? Comment below. Let's hear your thoughts. And don't forget, if you're feeling this story, hit that subscribe button and like the video so more people can join this conversation. The rooster had not yet crowed when Darius woke. His body was stiff from sleeping on a mat in Jonah's half-built shed, the cement floor hard as judgment beneath him. The night air clung to him, but it wasn't the cold that made him tremble. It was the memory of Elder Malachi standing with Amara. It was the sound of Jonah's voice betraying him. And above all, it was the sight of that cursed red-threaded calabash glowing faintly in the moonlight, as though the ancestors themselves had tied his name inside it. Darius sat up, breathing hard, fists balled against his knees. "They think they can shame me like a boy," he muttered. "They think I will bow. Amara believes this is her victory, but she forgets. There is no crown on her head without me." Jonah stirred on the other side of the shed, rolling over with a grunt. "You should sleep, brother," he mumbled. "The elders—" "Shut your mouth," Darius snapped, his voice sharp enough to slice the darkness. Jonah froze, eyes opening wide. You betrayed me in front of everyone. You chose their applause over my trust. Don't think I've forgotten." Jonah sat up slowly, rubbing his bald head, his voice low and cautious. "I did what had to be done, Darius. You went too far. The elders would have learned the truth sooner or later. I only spared you more shame." Darius lunged, grabbing Jonah by the collar. "Spared me? You buried me. You made me look weak in front of the whole village. My children saw it. My own wife smiled at it. And you, my friend, you twisted the knife deeper." Jonah shoved him back, coughing, but his words were steady. "Your pride has become poison. If you don't drink less of it, Darius, it will kill you before Amara even lifts a finger." The words stung because they were true. But Darius's pride wouldn't let him admit it. He turned away, seething, his mind racing. The calabash oath barred him from stepping into his own house. The elders barred him from council and market. And now the whispers spreading through the village barred him from respect. What was left to him? Revenge. Not the kind that struck fast and loud. The oath made that dangerous. Stepping across Amara's threshold could invite misfortune he wasn't brave enough to test. No, his revenge would have to be cunning, quiet, sharp as a knife hidden in the folds of cloth. As the first light of dawn brushed the horizon, Darius left the shed. He walked the narrow path past the sleeping goats and the wells still covered, his mind clenching around a single thought. Amara will pay for turning everyone against me. But Amara was not sleeping either. Inside her courtyard, she sat under the mango tree with a calabash bowl of water balanced on her lap. Mama Grace snored softly on the mat by the door, as promised, while Dion and Zuri slept soundly in their room. The house was quiet, but Amara's heart was awake, beating to the rhythm of her plan. She dipped her fingers into the water and whispered words her grandmother had taught her, old words meant to gather strength, to call courage from the corners of the earth. She was not praying for Darius's downfall. No, her revenge was bigger than that. She wanted his pride dismantled, his shadow stripped away, until even the friends who once clapped for him could no longer recognize the man he pretended to be. The first step was already working. The oath and Jonah's confession had cut Darius's legs from under him. But she knew him well, knew that he would not sit quietly in shame. He would lash out. He would scheme. And when he did, she would be ready. Amara dried her hands and rose. She tied her wrapper tightly around her waist and whispered to herself, "The root grows quietly, but when the rain comes, it splits stone." By mid-morning, Darius was in the laborers' square, pushing through men waiting to be chosen for work. He shouted louder than the rest, trying to prove he still mattered, but the foreman avoided his eyes. Word had already spread. The elders had spoken. No one wanted a man cursed by oath on their team. "Go home," the foreman said sharply. "Your strength is no good to me if it brings trouble." Laughter broke out from the other men. Darius's fists clenched, but he swallowed his rage. Fighting here would only humiliate him further. He stalked away, shoulders hunched, muttering under his breath. As he passed the market, he heard the women whispering. "That's him," one said. "The one who kicks his wife like a drum." Another hissed, "Be careful, don't sell him on credit. The cooperative already voted." Darius's face burned. The market that once welcomed him now spat him out like bitter cola. That evening, he sat alone under the neem tree where the elders had gathered days before. His thoughts twisted like snakes. He had been stripped of honor, of respect, of power. But one thing remained, his children. If he could not control Amara, he would use them. "They love me," he whispered to himself. "They still love their father. I will remind them who provides, who protects. Through them, I will reach her. Through them, I will break her spirit." The shadows lengthened, swallowing his figure in darkness. Back in the courtyard, Amara watched Zuri braid Dion's hair into clumsy rows, both of them laughing. She smiled faintly, but her eyes hardened with resolve. She had already sensed where Darius's mind would turn. The children were his last weapon, and also his last weakness. And Amara was prepared to use that weakness against him in ways he could not yet imagine. Shape engagement prompt. Viewers, what would you do if your partner tried to use your children against you after losing power in the community? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this is where Amara's story sharpens. And if you haven't already, subscribe and like this video so you don't miss what happens next. The children were the bridge Darius believed he still controlled. He told himself that no matter how bitter Amara became, Dion and Zuri would always look at him with the same wide eyes that once glowed with admiration. If the elders in the market had turned their backs, surely his children would not. On the third day after the oath, Darius positioned himself near the schoolyard. He waited under the almond tree where traders often rested their loads, his back pressed to the bark, his jaw tight with determination. When the bell rang and children spilled out in their colorful uniforms, he stepped forward. "Dayon!" His voice carried across the chatter. "Zuri!" The siblings froze. Dion's hand instinctively found his sister's. Zuri's eyes lit up first. She was still young enough to believe every father's call was safe. But Dion hesitated. He remembered his teacher, Mr. Reed's warning. "Your father is welcome to greet you, but never follow him without an elder present." Darius saw the hesitation. It stung like a thorn. He crouched down, spreading his arms wide. "Don't you know your father anymore? Come here, my blood." Slowly, Zuri tugged Dion's hand, and they approached. When they were close enough, Darius scooped them into his arms. For a moment, the warmth of their small bodies against his chest soothed his anger. But it wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed proof he still mattered. "I've missed you," he murmured. "Your mother is turning you against me, isn't she? But remember, your father is the one who provides. Who carried you on his back when you were small? Who taught you how to run?" Dion shifted uncomfortably. "Papa, Mama said we must wait for the elder if we want to see you." Darius's grip tightened. "Elders? Ha! Do elders put food on your table? Do elders tuck you in at night? No, it is me, your father, and I will always be your father." Zuri smiled faintly, comforted by his embrace, but Dion's eyes darted toward the gate. Relief washed over him as he saw Auntie Ola striding toward them, her wrapper tied firm, her gaze sharp. "Darius," she called, her voice calm but firm. "You know the rule. You cannot take them without an elder present." Darius's jaw clenched. "I'm not taking them. I'm holding my own children. Is that a crime now?" Auntie Ola didn't flinch. "It becomes one if you cross the line drawn by the oath." Dayon and Zuri slipped from their father's arms and clung to Auntie Ola's sides. Darius's chest rose and fell like a storm about to break. But under her gaze, and the curious stares of other parents, he forced himself to step back. "Go then," he spat. "Run to her. Forget your father." Zuri looked back once, confusion in her small eyes. Dayon kept his gaze fixed forward, jaw set like a boy trying to grow into a man too soon. When they were gone, Darius slammed his fist into the tree trunk. Bark splintered, but the tree did not yield. That night, Amara sat with the children under the mango tree. She listened carefully as Dayon explained what happened, his voice steady but his hands trembling. Zuri curled in her lap, quiet and restless. Amara stroked her daughter's hair. "Children," she said softly, "your father loves you in his way, but love that breaks your mother is not love. You can trust. Do you understand?" Dayon nodded slowly. Zuri buried her face deeper into Amara's wrapper. Amara kissed them both on their foreheads. "He will come again," she said, "and when he does, we will not push him away. We will let him speak, but we will listen with wisdom, not with fear." The children did not fully understand, but they trusted their mother. Later, when the house was quiet and Mama Grace's soft snores filled the doorway, Amara met with Auntie Ola and Baba Keji. They sat under the mango tree, the night cool around them. "He will not stop trying to use the children," Amara said. "His pride won't allow it." Auntie Ola nodded. "And every attempt he makes is another rope around his own neck. We only need to be patient." Baba Keji tapped the side of his drum, the rhythm like a heartbeat. Patience is good, but sometimes the hunter must bait the trap. If you want the lion to step where you choose, you leave a trail he cannot resist. Amara's eyes sharpened. A trail, she repeated. Baba Keji leaned closer. Let him believe he is winning their hearts. Let him come close enough to show his true hand. Then the village will see, not just his children's fear, not just your word, but his own hunger devouring him. Amara nodded, the seed of a new plan sprouting in her mind. She looked up at the mango tree, its leaves whispering above her. Then we will give him the bait he cannot refuse. The night deepened. Far away, Darius sat alone in Jonah's shed, his thoughts circling like vultures. He whispered to himself, if the children are mine, Amara is mine. Through them, I will break her spirit. He did not know that Amara was already shaping the very snare into which he would walk. Shape. Would you like Chapter 7 to reveal Darius's next attempt, him sneaking gifts and whispers to the children? Or should it focus on Amara preparing the trap with the help of the community? The next market day dawned bright, the streets humming with the rhythm of traders setting out their goods. Smoke curled up from frying oil, children darted between stalls with coins clutched in sweaty palms, and voices rose and fell like waves. In that bustle, Darius saw his chance. He had scraped together a few coins, borrowed from a cousin who hadn't yet heard about the elder's ruling, and used them to buy small trinkets, a wooden spinning top painted red, and a cloth doll with beads braided into its hair. They were simple things, but to children they could mean the world. He positioned himself along the path from school to home, crouching near a stall where palm fronds offered shade. His eyes scanned the crowd until he spotted Dion and Zuri walking together, carrying their exercise books under their arms. Mama Grace was meant to fetch them, but she had paused at a stall to haggle over dried fish. Perfect. Darius stepped out, his smile wide, his voice syrup-sweet. My children, he called, holding out the toys. Look what I brought for you. Come, take them. Zuri's eyes lit up instantly. Her little hands twitched toward the doll, but Dayon stepped in front of her, blocking the path. He looked at his father, then at the spinning top, then back again. His jaw clenched. Mama said we should not take things from you without an elder, he said firmly. Darius's smile faltered, but only for a moment. He crouched lower, lowering his voice into a tone he once used to calm them when they were small. Dayon, you're a man now. A man knows his father's love. Do you think I would harm you? This is not a trap. It is love. Don't let your mother's bitterness blind you. Zuri tugged at Dion's sleeve. But it's pretty, she whispered. Dion shook his head, eyes never leaving his father's face. If it's love, you can bring it when the elder is with us. The words cut deep. Darius felt his blood heat. His pride scrape raw. He shoved the toys toward them. Take them, or will you stand there and shame your father in public? The sharpness in his voice startled Zuri. Tears welled in her eyes. She stepped back, clutching Dion's hand. Before Darius could press further, a drumbeat rang out. 3 quick strikes, sharp and deliberate. It was Baba Keji. He sat by the well with his small talking drum, watching. The rhythm was a signal, one every child in the village knew. Danger. Step back. Eyes are watching. Other traders turned their heads. The market grew quieter, and there was Amara, stepping through the crowd, Mama Grace beside her. Both women walking with the calm assurance of people who had expected this very moment. Amara's gaze was steady as she approached. She looked at the toys in Darius's hands, then at her children, then finally at him. Is this how you prove your love? She asked softly. By forcing it into their hands when they fear it. Darius's throat tightened. You, he began, but the words tangled in his mouth. Amara turned to the crowd. Let the market see for themselves, she said, her voice carrying. Here is a man the elders warned, a man who swore his children were his pride. And here he is, trying to buy them like goats in the square. The murmurs grew. Women shook their heads. Men frowned. A trader muttered, shameful. Darius's face burned. He threw the toys to the ground, the spinning top clattering, the doll's beaded hair scattering in the dust. You think you're clever, he spat. But this isn't over, Amara. Not by far. Amara's eyes narrowed, her voice calm but edged with iron. No, Darius, it isn't over. But the ending will not be yours to choose. She gathered Dayon and Zuri, brushing dust from their clothes, while Baba Keji's drum echoed a slow, steady rhythm, like a warning carried on the wind. As Amara led her children away, the crowd parted for her. Behind her, Darius stood in the dust, fists trembling, eyes blazing with rage. But he did not see the small smile that flickered across Amara's face as she walked. For she knew he had taken the bait. The trap was closing, and soon the village would not just hear of his desperation. They would see it with their own eyes. And when they did, his pride would crumble completely. The market incident spread faster than smoke in Harmattan wind. By nightfall, every corner of the village hummed with whispers. He tried to bribe his own children. The boy refused. The girl cried. The story grew legs. By the time it reached the elders' ears, some claimed Darius had tried to snatch the children outright. Whether true or twisted, one thing was certain. His shame was no longer private. It had become a public feast. Amara knew the moment was near. She sat beneath the mango tree, her children asleep inside, Mama Grace beside her, and Auntie Ola listening in the shadows. Baba Keji's drum lay across his lap, silent but ready. He will try again, Amara said. His pride will not allow him to stop now. And when he does, the people must see it with their own eyes. Not just whispers, proof. Mama Grace nodded, her voice low. Then we set the stage. Where all can gather, yet he will believe only his children wait. Auntie Ola leaned forward. The schoolyard. At dismissal, the crowd is always there. Traders, parents, elders. If he approaches the children again, he will expose himself. Baba Keji tapped his drum once, deep and steady. Then I will call the crowd with rhythm. No need for words, the sound will bring them running. Amara's eyes sharpened. Good. We will let him walk into the snare with his own feet. Shape. Meanwhile, Darius paced Jonah's shed like a caged animal. His anger boiled hotter with each passing hour. He could still hear Dion's voice, calm, defiant. If it's love, bring it when the elder is with us. Those words had cut him deeper than the elder's decree. They had stripped him bare in front of the crowd. No more games, he muttered to himself. No more waiting for her to humiliate me. Tomorrow I will take what is mine. I will speak to my children in front of everyone. Let them hear me. Let them see I am still their father. Jonah, lying on his mat, sat up sharply. Darius, listen to yourself. The oath is real. If you push too far, the misfortune will not only swallow you, it will swallow anyone standing with you. Darius glared at him. You betrayed me once, Jonah. If you fear the oath, hide behind it. But I will not live in chains woven by women and weak men. He stormed out into the night, leaving Jonah shaking his head, muttering a prayer under his breath. Shape. The next afternoon, the trap was set. The schoolyard buzzed with the usual chaos. Children pouring out, vendors calling their wares, mothers clapping hands to summon their little ones. Amara stood back in the shade of a tree, her wrapper tied tight, her eyes fixed on the gate. Auntie Ola and Mama Grace mingled among the parents, pretending to haggle over oranges. Baba Keji sat casually on a bench, his drum balanced on his knee, waiting for the right moment. Dayon and Zuri emerged from the classroom, clutching their books. They scanned the crowd and saw Amara's nod. She had told them what to do, walk the usual path, no fear, no hesitation. If their father came, they were not to run nor to hide. They were to stand still and let the truth show itself. And then, as if on cue, Darius appeared. His shirt was freshly pressed, his sandals oiled, his head held high. He strode into the schoolyard as though nothing bound him, his voice booming, Dayon, Zuri, my children, come to your father. The crowd stilled. Parents exchanged glances. Traders hushed their calls. All eyes turned to watch. Dayon froze for a heartbeat, then remembered his mother's words. He took Zuri's hand and stood tall. Father, he said loudly, the elders said you cannot take us alone. If you love us, wait for them. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gathering. Some nodded approvingly. Others whispered in shock at the boy's courage. Darius's smile faltered. His eyes flickered to the watching faces, then back to his son. Dion, don't shame me before these people. I am your father. Do not raise your voice against me. Zuri clung to her brother, whispering, Dion, I'm scared. Dion squeezed her hand tighter. Mama said fear is the rope he uses. Don't give it to him. The words rang clear, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Baba Keji struck his drum. 3 sharp beats. At once the crowd pressed closer, forming a circle around the children. Amara stepping through the throng to stand at their side. Darius, she said, her voice steady as steel, you have walked into your own reflection. Before your people, before your children, before the oath itself. What more proof do they need? The scarred elder who had come quietly to watch now stepped forward. He lifted his staff high, his voice thunderous. Enough! This man has broken the spirit of the oath, even if he has not stepped across the threshold. He has tried to twist his children, to shame his house, to defy the will of the community. The people roared in agreement. Hands pointed, voices shouted. Some cried out for punishment. Others demanded exile. Darius's face twisted with rage and desperation. He shouted above the noise, You cannot take my children from me. You cannot strip me of everything. They are mine by blood. But Amara's voice cut through the chaos, calm and final. No, Darius, they are not yours to own. They are ours to protect. And today, the village sees it clearly. The crowd surged with anger and resolution, closing tighter around him. The drumbeat quickened, echoing like a storm. And then, over the roar, the scarred elder raised his staff again and declared, If a man cannot live by the fence of his people, then he cannot live among his people. The council will decide his place tonight. Gasps spread. Exile. The word hung heavy in the air, though it had not been spoken outright. Darius's eyes widened, his breath ragged. For the first time, true fear flashed across his face. He looked at Amara, at his children, at the crowd that once clapped for him, and saw only walls where once he thought there were doors. Night fell heavy on the village. The moon hid behind drifting clouds as though it too wished to avoid the council's judgment. In the great hall, the elders gathered on carved stools, their staffs resting across their knees. The air was thick with expectation. Men and women pressed close at the windows and doors, whispering, waiting for the verdict. At the center of the hall stood Darius, his arms folded, his face a mask of defiance that barely concealed the fear in his eyes. On one side, Amara sat quietly with Auntie Ola and Mama Grace. Dayon and Zuri were not brought in. They slept under watchful neighbors, their safety guaranteed by the community. Baba Keji rested in the shadows, his drum silent, waiting for the rhythm that would mark the outcome. The oldest elder rose slowly, leaning on his staff. His voice, though weathered, carried the weight of generations. We gather not for quarrel but for judgment. A man has tested the fence we built. He has tried to climb it with gifts, with words, with shame. Tonight, we decide, shall the fence hold him out, or shall he find his place within it? The scarred elder stood next. The law of 30 days was broken, not by foot crossing a threshold, but by spirit. The oath is not a net of words, it is a boundary of trust. Darius has mocked it, and the people have seen it. What trust remains for him among us? Murmurs rose from the crowd. Some shouted, Exile! Others argued, He is still a father. Let him work. Let him prove change. Then Elder Malachi, Jonah's father, stepped forward, his frame wiry but unyielding. His voice was sharp as cut stone. When pride blinds a man, he stumbles into his own pit. But if we cast him out, his children may grow with bitterness. If we keep him close, his poison may spread. The question is not about him alone. It is about what lesson we leave behind. The hall stirred with tension. Amara finally stood, her eyes steady, her hands folded before her. Elders, she said, her tone calm but edged with iron, I do not ask for vengeance. I ask for protection, not just for me, but for every woman, every child who watches how you decide tonight. If you allow his pride to remain unchecked, others will believe cruelty is strength. But if you show that pride can be broken, The lesson will live longer than any punishment. A silence fell so deep even the night insects hushed. The people leaned in, waiting. The scarred elder raised his staff high. Then let the council decide. Speak your votes. One by one, the elders declared. Some called for strict exile, banishment beyond the river where no one would trade with him. Others argued for labor under watch, to humble his pride with work until his hands remembered gentleness. A few suggested binding him to public service, repairing roofs, digging wells, tasks that would rebuild what he had torn. The votes were tallied. The verdict, Darius would not be exiled outright, but he would live under sanction. For 6 months he would serve the community, every step watched, every deed weighed. His voice would carry no authority. His hands would build, but his pride would not lead. The hall erupted, some in relief, others in protest. Darius's eyes blazed. He clenched his fists, his voice shaking with fury. 6 months like a slave? You strip me of honor before my people, before my children. This is worse than exile. Elder Malachi's gaze cut him down. It is not worse than exile, boy. It is mercy. And if you spit on mercy, then you prove you were never worthy of it. The scarred elder struck his staff thrice on the ground. So it is decided. 6 moons of labor. After that, we will judge again. The crowd spilled into the night, buzzing with the weight of what had been decided. Amara walked out quietly, her face unreadable. She had expected this. She had even hoped for it, for she knew exile would make Darius dangerous in the shadows, but labor would break him in the open, piece by piece under the watch of the same community that once clapped for him. But Darius, his pride was a beast wounded, and beasts wounded are most dangerous. As the crowd dispersed, Jonah slipped into the shed where Darius sulked in the dark. Take the council's mercy, he urged. Work, change. Let your children see a different man. Darius's eyes gleamed in the half-light, sharp and vengeful. No, Jonah, I will not bow. They think they've broken me, but they haven't. I will not serve like a dog. If they will not give me honor, I will take it. If Amara wants revenge, then let her have it, for I will give her more than she can bear. Jonah froze, sensing the danger in his friend's tone. What are you planning? Darius leaned closer, his whisper cold. Something none of them expect. They think the oath binds me. They think labor will humble me. But the night still has places the oath does not reach. And in the night, I will remind her who I am. The shed fell silent, Jonah staring, his stomach twisting with fear. He knew then that Amara's revenge had not yet reached its peak, because Darius was about to make his most desperate move. Viewers, if you were one of the elders, would you have chosen exile or forced labor for Darius? Which punishment teaches the better lesson? Share your opinion in the comments. And remember, if you're following Amara's story, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the storm that's coming. The sun had barely risen when the council's judgment took effect. Darius was summoned to the village square, tools laid out before him, mortar, shovel, baskets of mud brick. The task was simple: repair the broken walls of the community well. The people gathered not only to watch but to measure whether his pride would bow. He stood there, shirt clinging to his back, the weight of countless eyes pressing against him. Children whispered. Women crossed their arms. Men shook their heads. The scarred elder pointed his staff. Work and prove your hands still belong to the community. Darius seized the shovel, slamming it into the earth. Each scoop of soil was a declaration. I am not broken. I am not your slave. He worked furiously, more to spite the stares than to mend the wall. Sweat streaked down his face, but the murmurs of the crowd cut deeper than the heat. By midday, the wall was rising, crooked but standing. The villagers clapped softly, not for him, but for the well. Darius's chest tightened. They celebrated the water, not the man. His pride howled inside him. That night, when the village slept, he slipped away. Jonah, half asleep in the shed, didn't notice until the door creaked. Darius moved through the shadows like a snake, his breath ragged, his mind a storm. 6 months of this? 6 months of humiliation? No, I will remind them all who Darius is. I will remind Amara she cannot cage me with drums and words. He crept toward the courtyard he once ruled, his feet silent on the packed earth. The calabash still sat on the wall, its red thread glowing faintly in the moonlight. Darius froze. He could feel its weight, its warning. Sweat prickled his skin. If I step across, the curse will follow. But his anger was stronger than his fear. He bent low, scooped a handful of dust, and flung it at the calabash. The vessel rattled but did not break. The thread held, unyielding. The silence afterward was louder than any drum. Inside the courtyard, Amara stirred. She had been waiting. Her ears caught the faint scrape, her eyes adjusting to the dark. She rose quietly, lifting the lantern she had kept hidden by the door. With one swift motion, she lit it and held it high. The flame revealed Darius frozen by the wall, his hand still outstretched, his face caught between rage and fear. Their eyes met across the threshold. "You dare," Amara said softly, her voice steady as stone. "Even the ancestors warned you, but still you dare." The lantern light flickered, casting shadows across her face, making her look taller, older, untouchable. Darius's breath came in gasps, his fury breaking through. "You've turned them all against me, the elders, the market, my own children. But listen well, Amara. If I cannot walk into this house as a husband, I will tear it down as a storm. You will not win." From the shadows, a sound answered him. Dum, dum, dum. Baba Kaji's drum. He had been waiting too. The rhythm rose, quick and sharp, carrying into the night. Doors opened, feet shuffled, voices whispered. In moments the neighbors gathered, lanterns glowing, eyes wide. The trap had been sprung. Darius was caught not only by Amara's gaze but by the witness of the village. Amara raised her chin. "Here is your storm," she declared. "But storms end, roots endure, and tonight every eye sees the truth of the man who tried to break his own house." Darius's chest heaved. He looked around at the faces, the same people who once clapped for his boasts. Now their eyes burned with disappointment, with shame, with anger. His fury turned to desperation. "This is not finished," he roared, stepping back into the dark. "You think you've caged me, but I will not bow. You will see." He fled into the night, swallowed by shadows, his footsteps fading. The calabash remained on the wall, untouched, the red thread glowing brighter as though fed by his defiance. Amara lowered the lantern slowly. Her lips tightened, her resolve unbroken. She knew this was not the end. Darius would strike again. But she also knew something he did not. Every step he took in defiance pulled the rope tighter around his own neck. And when it finally snapped, it would not be by her hand alone. The village itself would finish what he had begun. Shape, engagement prompt. Viewers, if you were Amara, would you have confronted Darius in the moment, or let the curse of the calabash teach him a lesson without lifting a finger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're following this story, like and subscribe so you don't miss the final reckoning. Shape. Do you want Chapter 11 to focus on Darius planning his most desperate strike? Something dangerous that could cost him everything? Or Amara rallying the community to prepare for his final move? The village awoke to whispers of the night's confrontation. Some said Darius had tried to shatter the calabash and failed. Others swore they saw the red thread glow like fire when he touched it. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Darius was no longer just a man under sanction. He was a man chasing his own ruin. But ruin makes men desperate. Hidden away in Jonah's shed, Darius paced like a beast gnawing its cage. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath sharp. The humiliation of the night burned him more than the lash of any whip. Caught, watched, shamed like a thief. He clenched his fists until his nails drew blood from his palms. "No more waiting," he muttered. "If the oath binds me, I'll break what it protects. If the village turns against me, let it pay for its betrayal. If Amara thinks she's clever, let her see what happens when a man has nothing left to lose." Jonah, watching from his mat, felt the hair rise on his arms. "Darius, don't talk like this. You're walking into destruction. The elders gave you mercy. Work. Finish your punishment. In 6 moons, you'll have your chance to stand again." But Darius's laugh was hollow. 6 moons? By then, my children will no longer remember me. They'll belong to her completely. No, I will not wait. Tonight I end this. Jonah's heart pounded. What are you saying? Darius turned, eyes burning. If I cannot have my house, then no one will. If I cannot sit at my table, then no one will eat from it. Let them all see what happens when they strip a man of honor. Jonah recoiled. You would destroy your own children's home? Darius's face twisted. Better they remember me as fire than forget me as ash. Jonah felt the weight of choice crush him. Speak and risk Darius's wrath. Stay silent and become complicit in a crime that would scar the village forever. Shape. While Darius's rage boiled, Amara was not idle. She gathered with Auntie Ola, Baba Keji, and Mama Grace beneath the mango tree. The scarred elder joined them, staff in hand, his eyes sharp. The courtyard hummed with quiet determination. He will not stop, Amara said. Last night proved it. He will come again, more desperate than before. And this time, he will not aim to shame me alone. He will aim to destroy. The scarred elder nodded. We must be ready. His pride is not just his burden anymore. It has become a danger to us all. Baba Keji tapped his drum, each beat deliberate. Then let the people guard what he seeks to burn. If he strikes, he will not strike you alone. He will strike the whole village, and the whole village will answer. Auntie Ola leaned forward, her voice calm but heavy. Amara, you have endured much, but the next move is not yours. It must be ours. When a man becomes a storm, only the community can build the shelter. Amara exhaled slowly, her eyes shining in the lantern light. Then let it be so. I will not run. Let him come. And when he does, let the village see the truth until there is nothing left for him to hide behind. Shape that night, the air was tense. The wind carried the smell of rain, though the clouds had not yet broken. Darius stood in the shadows near his old courtyard, holding a bundle of dry palm fronds in one hand, a clay pot of oil in the other. His breath came fast, wild. If I burn it, she will lose everything. If I burn it, they will fear me again. If I burn it, she will never forget my name. He stepped closer, his sandals silent on the earth. But the courtyard was not sleeping. As his hand reached for the gate, a drumbeat cracked the night, sharp, sudden, echoing like thunder. Dum, dum, dum. Lanterns flared in the shadows. Voices rose. Figures stepped forward. Men and women, young and old. The red-banded night watch at the front. The entire community had gathered, waiting in silence for this moment. Amara emerged from the doorway, Dayon and Zuri behind her, their small hands clutching her wrapper. Her face was calm, her voice carrying into the night. You came to destroy, she said, but the house you wanted to burn is no longer mine alone. It belongs to all of us. Look around you, Darius. Your fight is not with me. It is with everyone you tried to make blind. Darius froze, his chest heaving. The oil jar slipped in his trembling hand. He looked from face to face. The elders, the neighbors, even Jonah standing at the edge, shame in his eyes. Every gaze was a mirror, and every mirror showed the same truth. He was alone. The scarred elder struck his staff 3 times. This is the proof we needed, he thundered. This man does not seek forgiveness. He seeks ruin. Tonight we decide not 6 moons, not exile, but his place among us forever. The crowd roared, voices rising like a wave ready to break. Darius staggered back, fear flashing in his eyes at last. He had wanted to be remembered as fire, but the village now prepared to douse him with the weight of its judgment. And Amara, standing tall in the lantern glow, knew her revenge had reached its final stage. For now it was not her alone who sought justice. It was the entire village, ready to strip Darius of the last shred of pride he clung to. Shape, engagement prompt, viewers. If you were in the crowd, what judgment would you give Darius in this moment? Banishment or something harsher? Comment your thoughts below. And if you want to see the final resolution, subscribe and like this video so you don't miss the last chapter of Amara's story. The night was electric with voices. Lanterns swung in the breeze, their flames shivering, throwing long shadows across the courtyard, where Darius stood trapped between his own fury and the village's eyes. The calabash still glowed faintly on the wall, its red thread unbroken, its warning alive. The scarred elder raised his staff, silencing the crowd with 3 sharp strikes against the earth. "We have seen enough," he declared. "A man who lifts his hand against his own house is a danger. A man who mocks the oath of the ancestors is cursed. A man who plots to burn what he cannot control is no longer fit to live among us. Tonight, we decide his fate." Murmurs rippled. Some shouted, "Exile!" Others cried, "Bind him to labor!" But a third, harsher voice rose from the women's circle. "Strip him of name and honor. Let him live, but let no one call him husband, father, or son." The crowd gasped. Such a punishment was worse than exile. It meant to live among the people as if invisible, to exist without respect, without title, without voice, a ghost in his own land. Elder Malachi, his eyes heavy with sorrow, stepped forward. "Darius," he said, "I once called you son, but you are not the man I raised. You were given mercy, and you spat on it. You were given time, and you twisted it. If you cannot live as a man of the village, then you will live as nothing. From this night, your name is no longer spoken in council. Your hands may work, but no one will thank you. Your children will grow, but you will not guide them. You are cut off from honor until the earth takes you back." The scarred elder lifted his staff again. "So it is judged," the crowd erupted, not in cheers but in a heavy hum of finality. Baba Keji struck his drum once, the sound deep as thunder, sealing the decree. Darius staggered back as though the words themselves were blows. His chest heaved, his mouth opened, but no voice came. He looked at Amara, hoping for some glimmer of mercy, some sign she would plead for him. But Amara only stood taller, her children at her side, her eyes steady. "This," she said, her voice carrying clear, "is the revenge I promised. Not fire, not blood, but truth. You thought you could shame me before the people. Instead, the people have stripped you of the very thing you worshipped, your pride. You wanted to be feared. Now you will be forgotten." Dayon stepped closer, his small voice cutting through the silence. "Mama, can we go home?" Amara nodded, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, my son, we go home." As she led her children away, the villagers parted for her, their respect plain in their eyes. The women touched her arm, the men bowed their heads. Even the elders watched her with quiet acknowledgement. She had not just survived, she had shifted the ground beneath them all. Behind her, Darius collapsed to his knees, his face buried in his hands. No one helped him up. No one spoke his name. The calabash on the wall flickered in the lantern light, its thread glowing one last time before the flame dimmed. The oath had been fulfilled. And so it was that the man who once strutted in his courtyard, boasting to his friends, became a shadow no one followed. And the woman he sought to break became the root that held the house, strong, steady, and unshaken.